Thank you all for being here for today's panel. We decided to do something a little different than the typical keynote. Rather than just hearing from one speaker, we have not just one, but two fabulous leaders within the agency. We had scheduled to have three. Rena Bitter from the Department of State was going to join us in this conversation, but life intervened and she's stuck on a tarmac in Washington, D.C. So kudos to you two for being able to weather the storm. But very, very honored. Thank you so much for being here. These are two really critical leaders of two very important agencies in facing the challenges that we have in front of us. Our relationship with your offices and with you is stronger than it's ever been. We are very proud to be partners and collaborators, and sometimes respectful disagreeers on issues in trying to rebuild, rethink, and reform the immigration system that is so critical to us. As is evident by the two women here, the people that have been charged by the Biden administration to lead the agencies, I am happy to say, are more qualified than any I have ever seen in the 25 years I've been working in Washington, D.C. There have really been some spectacular leaders, including the both of you, who have been tasked by the Biden administration to take control of and lead us forward. And thank God for that, because the challenges that we face financially, structurally, politically around immigration are more difficult than certainly than the 30 years I've been in Washington, D.C., but probably in our lifetime. So I'm glad that you are there. I'm glad that we are going to be partners in wrestling through these challenges together, but we should all be keenly aware of how difficult the challenges are in front of us in making the immigration system work the way it needs to work for the people that it needs to be working for. So I'm going to do some quick introductions, and then we're going to have a discussion that I hope that will give these people the benefits of some of your insights and priorities and vision. And then we can talk through some of the challenges that we will be facing together. And I want together to be an important part of this conversation. We often get in dialogue with you all and we get stuck talking about all of the problems. And I hope we'll spend some time talking about how can we get on the same page about advocating for the things that have to change in order for there to be real change in the agency. All right, let me do some quick introductions. I think most of you know these amazing leaders, but I will take a minute to introduce them. Jaddou is the Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. She was appointed as the Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in August of 2021. She was previously Chief Counsel at USCIS from 2014 until 2017, so you know the agency well. Before joining the agency, you were the Director of DHS Watch, which was sort of like our own private watchdog of what was happening at the agency during the Trump administration. And you did amazing work there. So again, know the agency incredibly well. She served as an adjunct law professor at American University. She was responsible for developing and implementing congressional strategy for the U.S. Department of State as a Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Legislative Affairs. She served as Chief Counsel of the Subcommittee on Immigration and Citizenship in the House of Representatives, and as Senior Counsel to Representative Zoe Lofgren. So you have seen this work from many, many, many angles. And Kerry Doyle, somebody who everybody here should know. Kerry Doyle has extensive experience in the private and nonprofit sectors as an outstanding lawyer and advocate. She most recently worked for 20 years as managing partner with the Boston immigration law firm of Graves and Doyle. For the last 5.5 years, she also served as an appointed hearing officer for the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers, presiding over cases related to attorney disciplinary matters. She has been a leader within AILA for a very, very long time, chapter chair, influential mentor, and just generally kick-ass lawyer within AILA for a long time. So you have a long bio here. I hope you all will read it, but we're very, very pleased to have both of you, and thank you for your work and for your government service. It requires real dedication and effort, and we are glad that talented people like you have stepped in to play this important role. So, let me start with you. At our spring conference, you laid out 5 priorities that you're focused on: strengthening USCIS fiscal health and management, increase hiring and improve employee morale, promote efficiency in USCIS adjudications, deliver on your humanitarian mission, strengthen public engagement, and improve customer service. It was a great conversation there then. I hope we can have a little bit more of it now. So talk to us, how is progress going on these important priorities? Where are you? Which of these are you most focused on? Where have your celebrations been thus far? What have you been able to accomplish?
Thank you, Ben. And let me start by congratulating AILA on their 75th anniversary. So that's really, really good news. Really strong organization, 75 years and going strong. So congratulations. But I want to talk a little bit about those priorities and why we set them out. For folks who didn't make it to the spring conference, we knew that in order for us to make some transformational change at USCIS, you need to start out with ambitious yet achievable goals. And we need to set them out clearly so that everybody understands what they are and build from there. And hence the 5 priorities that Ben just laid out. Let me talk about what we have been doing since we set those out earlier this year. Number 1, strengthening USCIS fiscal health and management. Why is that so important? Many of you recall just a couple of years ago in 2020, what happened when USCIS went through a financial crisis. The effects of that financial crisis, we feel it today. And that is the fact that we are about 20% down on staff. So we have a vacancy rate of about 18-point-something% at this point. And that is because we had to have a hiring freeze for a year. And what does that mean? That means the agency, as people leave the agency through attrition, we could not replace them. We could not move people around who needed to be promoted. So we are now at this moment, if you're wondering why it is so hard to get through a backlog situation, we're down staff. We just don't have that ability to take and surge staff at this moment that we very much need to do. So what are we doing to address that? Going to the second priority. We are on a massive, massive hiring surge, about 4,000 positions. And we are pushing hard. If you go on usajobs.gov, which I encourage everyone to do, you will see constantly there are positions open and available now, and we are working as quickly as we possibly can. And good news, the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, gave us direct hiring authority for some of those positions, which even makes the process go faster, which, as you know, federal hiring processes are not usually the fastest, but this direct hiring authority is going to help us with some of those positions that they're allowing us to go through the direct hire authority. So that's really helpful. And our goal is to get to 95% fill rate, which is a healthy fill rate for an organization by the end of this calendar year, and we are on our way. So we're working really hard at that. We've set out all of the hiring officials. Our human capital and training is square on and working day in and day out. We are getting constantly briefed on where they are and coming up with new and innovative ideas. So the other part of this is Congress, as many of you know, and I want to thank you all for, especially for AILA and others who have really put themselves out there with Congress to ensure that we're appropriated to address the financial crisis, to address that because COVID, we have a backlog situation and other reasons why we have a tremendous unprecedented backlog. Congress gave us $275 million. That's great. We need to continue those appropriations. It's also really, really important for you to share the message that our humanitarian mission and delivering on that, which is something that we all believe in and we all want to support, it is growing by the day. Just take, for example, Operation Allies Welcome with regard to Afghanistan, Uniting for Ukraine. These things are constantly happening, and we have to figure out ways to pay for them with our existing funding. But when you're fee funded, 97% of our budget is fee funded. We are turning to those funds to take care of those crises, those humanitarian crises. So it is so important for Congress to start funding those humanitarian mission so that we can continue to effectively meet our ideals as a nation. And so I implore you to continue those efforts with Congress. We are also to ensure that we are ready for the future. We have not had a fee restructure in 6 years now, despite inflation, despite COVID, despite the fact that we're down staff, we don't have enough staff. We have not looked at our fee structure again. So we are carefully reviewing the situation now and coming up with an equitable fee structure for the future. And we hope to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, hopefully in the coming months, so that everyone has a moment to comment on that. So those are some of the steps we're taking longer term and short term to resolve some of the issues that we have been seeing.
I will say every time I hear you talk about that 20% drop in staff, it's amazing to me. When AILA went through the early phases of the pandemic, we were down about 10%, 12% staff, and it was crushing. So to be down 20% is a huge hole to try to dig out of. So you've got to not only hire them in this incredibly tight labor market, then you got to train them. So that's a really ambitious goal to get that done by the end of the year. You're still feeling confident about the ability to do that?
We are feeling confident that we can reach 95% by the end of the calendar year.
We're not going to skimp on the training part, right? Because
No, absolutely. In fact, I was just down at our training center just a few weeks ago to see how we're doing with regard to training. And we have classes there. It's a 6-week course that folks have to take when they come on as officers. And our refugee and asylum division also has its own training program, which is on my list to visit as well. So there are quite a few training possibilities for new officers, in addition to repeated training throughout the life cycle of someone at USCIS.
Awesome. And I think one more thing before I turn to Kerry. So stakeholder engagement, customer service have been a big part of that. You've been great on engaging with us in many ways. I think as you bring those folks on and trade them, that kind of dialogue is going to continue to be important, because they're going to have to work through sort of what we're seeing, where the rubber meets the road in all of those various places. So that stakeholder engagement, that liaison activities, can we count on that continuing?
Absolutely.
We want to be valuable to you as much as you are valuable to us.
Absolutely. And in fact, Kerry Selby, who is our leader in all things public engagement and customer service, is here with us. And I'm sure she's going to be on one of your other panels. She's wonderful. And she has led our efforts, first as acting recently. She was just promoted permanently. So we're really excited about that. She has led our efforts since last year, January of 2021. We went full force on public engagement. We firmly believe that without what it is that you're seeing on the ground every single day, you seeing the systemic issues, you seeing cases one after the other, if there's a problem, you're the ones who are seeing that. So you need to let us know. And so we need to keep that engagement going, and it's really fruitful. And in fact, Kerry can talk a little bit more in one of her sessions about some of the things that she's doing to improve that communication ability. But nonetheless, we will continue doing things like this. We have smaller group meetings. We've met in the spring. We also have our folks across the agency engaged in public engagement. We've had thousands of engagements since last year. So we will continue that, and we welcome new and innovative ways to do it, virtually, in person. Hopefully we can continue to do these in person, but we will always find ways to do that. I can't tell you how critical I think it is for us to have that partnership of engagement, for us to achieve our mission, because we are all serving the same people. You're just doing it from another perspective, right?
All right, so you heard that. They need our help telling Congress that they've got to fund the agency in ways that will allow them to do their job. And we've got to do a better job of finding those case examples, compiling those critical choke points in the system, and engaging with the agency. So we're going to do our part. That's my pledge to you. Kerry, so you spent a ton of time on that side of this microphone, being, as I said, an amazing AILA member and lawyer. talk to me. What is it like? What's the experience like being on the agency side? What has surprised you? And what are your priorities for the position you've got now?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. I want to say thank you for having me. It's really a great honor to be sitting here with Or and with you. And I listened to the challenges that I know that OPLA have, and they're sort of pale in comparison or to your job. And so
I might say the otherwise, but that's okay.
Right.
We can have that debate later.
Yeah, but I just want to say we stand in a partnership with you and with AILA to try to move forward the administration's goals to create a more fair, humane, and orderly system. So it's certainly been very enjoyable and challenging opportunity that I took up in September. And I've been very excited to get to work with OPLA on the other side as well. Being a litigator, immigration litigator, I worked closely with a number of my AILA colleagues, my OPLA colleagues in the past. It's been an incredible opportunity really to get to know everybody within the agency more closely. I will tell you that the people that work for OPLA are really amazing public servants and really take their role within the system very seriously and work hard every day to try to make the nation proud of the work that they do. And my deputies and the people at the headquarters are just incredibly smart, hardworking, knowledgeable people. And they take their role in working with the administration and moving the plans that are put in place forward in the best possible way that they can. And I've really got a lot of advice coming in to make sure to work closely with the career staff and to form a partnership. And that's what we've worked really hard to do. And they've been very welcoming to me and welcoming to our ideas. And where it's just been, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience so far. And I'm happy to face the challenges and see what things we can do to make the system work better within the parameters that we have. And we have similar themes to CIS. I mean, honestly, you face a lot of challenges, and I think some of the work we do, particularly with the ongoing PD memo and the increase of dismissals, I know we're doing nothing to help you in that regard. We're creating some new challenges for you, but whatever we can do to help, we stand ready to do that.
Yeah, let's dig on that, because I mean, the through line, even when DOS was going to be here for all of this, is this question of backlogs, right? Mm-hmm. Every area of the agency is faced with an unprecedented number of cases. A lot of that driven by what happened over the pandemic, but a lot of it is just real structural challenges that have been there way before the pandemic, and that certainly is true with the court backlog. Right. So I want to talk about that. I also, though, feel like we should also start with, I mean, your contribution right out of the gate with the priorities memo for ICE attorneys was fabulous. Really, really, really good stuff. Friday, Judge Tipton in Texas issues, well, 7 days from then they'll be enjoined. The underlying Mayorkas memo that your memo is based on will be enjoined. What will that mean for your memo? What will it mean for your folks? Will it continue despite the underlying one being enjoined?
So as you know, Judge Tipton's stay order came. We had 7 days. Luckily, both a stay was filed with Judge Tipton's court, but also emergency appeal and a stay with the Fifth Circuit was filed. We have now until he issued an additional stay until the 24th of June. So that gave us a little bit more breathing room to go to the Fifth Circuit. As you may know, there's also a case pending before the Sixth Circuit. It's funny, right? It's the way these things can cut both ways. I think Texas and Louisiana and Arizona that's suing the administration now sort of took a page out of AILA's book has learned well what can happen, and I understanding that if the government prevails in these cases, if we prevail, that may have implications on filings that happen in favor of immigrants as well. So, it's a complicated scenario. But when we produced the prosecutorial discretion memo to guide OPLA moving forward, we did recognize and point out the fact that there are ongoing enduring principles of prosecutorial discretion. So as you're walking around and jaywalking in New York and you're not getting pulled over and arrested or given a ticket, that's prosecutorial discretion. And so every one of us as a prosecutor have that some leeway, authority inherent within the work that we do, the enduring principles of prosecutorial discretion. So we're certainly working through what that will mean exactly. We certainly, if the Secretary's priority memos is enjoined in an ongoing fashion after the 24th, we won't be able to rely on the priorities anymore. I know that, especially on the ICE panel tomorrow, a lot of the conversation will be some of the good things about PD, but maybe some of the things that you feel that we could be doing better, or that problems that have arisen while we're starting to roll this out. And I, understand that. And I would, again, be saying the same thing if I were on the other side of the mic, but understanding that this may go away completely, I think maybe brings us back to some reality that we're all going to do the best that we can to try to continue to move forward in exercising our prosecutorial discretion. Now, the PD memo wasn't created solely as a backlog reduction document. It really was created because as USCIS faces, OPLA also has its own challenges, staffing and financial challenges, mainly because we have to run after EOIR. I mean, they're adding judges at an unprecedented rate. They've got courts that are popping up. It's like whack-a-mole. They're like, oh, we're gonna have another court here and another court here. And we have to figure out how to get staff there to staff those courts, because that's our role and that's our requirement to be there for DHS to represent them. We are hopeful that, again, our prosecutorial discretion will survive any challenges, ongoing challenges to the priorities memo, but certainly the groundwork will change. And I think it maybe reminds all of us that this authority and ability we have to look at cases and hopefully resolve them in ways that will help more people than would otherwise happen. We're on uneven ground. It's a building that can topple down. And so I think we're grateful in whatever we're able to do in the meantime. I'm doing some town halls. I was in Dallas yesterday and was chatting with some of our presenters who are doing the trainings for advanced trainings for some of the OPLA attorneys across the country. And I will tell you, all of them to a one said they're working very busily this week to try to get through their PD cases until or unless the PD process changes. Right. So they're very committed to try to make this work. And obviously an ancillary benefit to this is addressing some of the backlogs. Since 2018, the backlog has doubled. The prior administration's decision to have no priorities really did overload the system. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that spike. And so it's just important for us to be able to keep up and to have a just, humane system, to have some priorities and to have some focus. And we just have to be able to focus on the cases that are a priority, the important cases, so that we have the time and ability to actually more thoughtfully represent the government and more thoughtfully and more fulsomely engage with all of you. The secretary often compares his experience as a U.S. attorney and in the U.S. Attorney's Office to what we do. And I would love to be in that boat, because the U.S. attorneys have about 6 attorneys and staff per judge. We're lucky if we have 2.7. We have a number of AORs where we're 1-to-1. We have 1 attorney and staff per judge. And in those AORs in particular, I mean, we're just treading water. We're really treading water. And so we would love to be able to have more time, more ability to engage with people more fulsomely, to really engage ahead of time on cases. But as you know, and any of you litigate see this, someone drives up with their huge cart piled high with A files, and they're opening them and just trying to get the job done as best as they can. And so we would like to provide a higher level of service, a higher level of engagement. But right now, the resources and the backlog just doesn't enable us to do that to the level that we'd like to, or that even the secretary would like us to. But we're hopefully moving in that direction. And we, again, would look to be able to continue exercising our prosecutor's discretion in a just manner moving forward. But it definitely will change how that's happening.
You know, you hear a lot about judge hiring. We hear a lot about funding at USCIS. I don't hear a lot about funding for OPLA. Is there a commitment within the agency? Is there awareness and commitment within the agency to get at least some, you know, parity in terms of capacity with you and the court expansion of the courts and judges?
So clearly that was one of my talking points I missed when I was talking earlier, which is in addition to, or OPLA needs money. So really since day one, since I started, this has been a theme, which is we need more funding, we need more support. In fiscal year 22, we did get funding for an additional 100 attorneys that came from the White House and DHS, and we really appreciate that administration support in that regard and congressional support. Unfortunately, right, the budget didn't get finalized until March. So we had from March until the end of September to hire an additional 100 attorneys. And as Ora mentioned, I mean, we do have direct hiring authority, which makes a big difference. But even then, right, it's a cumbersome process to hire within the federal government. The other day I was listening to NPR, and I think, commercial came on for one of the staffing agencies, Indeed or something, right? And I was like, God, imagine that. Like, you can just hire a whole bunch of people whenever you feel like hiring a whole bunch of people. So that's been one of the lessons I've learned, is there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen when you work for the federal government, for the executive branch. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot of things that have to happen. And a lot of it's because Congress wants to make sure, and agencies want to make sure that there isn't, fraud, there isn't waste, that we're doing it right. But that means there's lots of processes, lots of paperwork, lots of people involved in things. So yes, we would also appreciate you supporting funding for OPLA. And again, I know for those of you who litigate, you're like, wait, what? We want more prosecutors? But yes, yes, if we have more prosecutors, we have more time, we have more ability, we can more thoughtfully look at cases, we can engage with all of you on a much deeper level. Then, as I said, often we're running, from case to case to case, and we would like to do a better job. That's one of our goals. But the reality of 1.6 million cases that we have to staff is just very difficult. I will tell you quickly that on FY23, there's a commitment to fund an additional, I think, 260 or so attorneys, another about 73 or so staff, support staff, because we can't do this job without our support staff. They really are the glue that hold us together. You see the attorneys, but the foundation are our support staff. So I know in FY23, we're looking for some additional funding, but as they keep adding judges, sometimes we're still, as we're adding, falling behind. So that's really important.
I think we could support additional funding with some caveats. Where do you get to that? Where do you get to that level where the idea of pretrial conferences, conversations about dismissals, so that it isn't just a sort of a, right, blanket approach that's blind to the needs of a particular case? I mean, can you see the agency getting to the point where it has the capacity to behave differently, not just to sort of keep up with the workload, but to approach the workload from a different perspective?
Right now, I would say no. I think even with the additional 200 plus attorneys and 70 plus support staff, we really are barely keeping up with with their funding and with their staffing. And understand too that it's not just the number of attorneys, but number of judges that we have to keep up with, but the locations, because every new location means a new facility that we have to fund and pay for, that we have to staff and add people to, and understanding that has been slower in moving into the electronic, 21st century way to practice law, as far as, electronic filings, electronic appearances. COVID's helped, but most of the courts are really coming back to full on in-person representation and appearances for people. So I would like to keep moving in that direction. You asked about the agency. I mean, ICE is very supportive of us, and they understand that we're short-staffed vis-a-vis the immigration court in particular. But we're competing. We're a piece of that competing pie. I mean, we're competing with other resource needs, including ICE is helping out in the southwest border. They've got ATD. Huge hundreds of thousands of people on ATD now. I mean, there are only 6,000 ERO officers and 6,000 HSI officers, agents. And so we compete within that budget for resources. And I will say that they have been very supportive when we've had to go back to the budget process to cut things or add things. They do put OPLA high on the list. So for that, I want to really, thank openly Acting Director Tay Johnson and PJ Lakeletter, who is the acting deputy, has been very supportive of OPLA within their other demands that they have. So.
Right. Well, I want to come back at some point to this conversation about trial conferences and more engagements and different ways to work. But let's Kerry raised the idea of efficiencies, 21st century strategies. You're going to be able to make a decent sized dent, you've said, on your backlogs with more people. But you've also been honest about the fact that that's not going to get you over the finish line in terms of that backlog, that part of your priorities are new ways, new efficiencies within the system. So, what's at the top of your list of things you wish the agency or you want the agency to be able to do differently, whether it's use of technology or maybe eliminating certain processes that happen now that are unnecessary or duplicative? Like, what's on your short list of things that you want to change from an efficiency and technology perspective that could make a dent in the backlog?
That's a really great question, because I wrote something down with regard to that when you mentioned electronic environments, communicating with the court. And we have our own version of that. So when someone's granted asylum, for example, at the court, they have to show up at a USCIS office, show some paperwork, get that done, make an appointment. It's very complicated. And I hear this over and over when I go to multiple cities, stakeholder engagements. This is a laborious process. And I think, why are we doing it this way? Why aren't we communicating with the court ourselves electronically, receiving that information and acting upon it?
Let's pretend like I just asked that question. That's a great question.
So and this is exactly the response I get. It's same thing. So it's something that we're talking to EOR about, and frankly, it's antiquated technology systems. USCIS luckily has had the benefit, because back in the day of the DACA days, which you recall, the US Digital Service, which is an incredible innovation in the government that exists today. They are like a fixer, a technology fixer. They come into agencies, they look at a process and say, how can we make this better with technology? USCIS embraced USDS several years ago. And because of that, our agency has been transforming faster than probably most federal agencies. As much as you probably wonder that can't be true, but take a look at some of the other agencies, federal agencies you work with. And so because of that, we have that innovation inside our agency, and we continue to use that. And we are prioritizing our budget, our spending on a lot of technology. And so when I think about this, we think about, well, what are humans doing in the adjudications process that they don't have to do because a computer can do it? We are looking at every possibility. So when you look at employment authorization documents, we're already making a decision on the underlying status. And if that employment authorization is close to that underlying status decision, why are we taking extra time for a human being to spend a lot of time then picking up another form, maybe a different person in another office, and reviewing that? Maybe we need to find a way to do that together. So we're we're coming up with things like that. And how are we doing this? So I brought into my office, the director's office, someone who has decades of experience at USCIS. Many of you may know him. He was the head of field office directorate, Dan Renault, whose sole job is to think about these things. He knows our systems, he knows our processes. He's techie, probably a little less than a little more than I am, because I'm not as good at that, but I try. And we also have someone in our director's office who recently joined the agency, Doug Rand. They are focused heavily on how can we make these improvements and how can we shift our budget resources so that we're focused on efficiency, not just moving to use technology to use it, but why are you embracing technology? For efficiency. That's the point. And so we're thinking about, even if we can't get to electronic intake quickly, can we get to a point where we, even if we take paper in, digitize it immediately? And let me give you an example that we're working on right now, employment-based adjustments, which I know a lot of you have an interest in. We have to pull those files. It takes administrative staff, which, by the way, in a labor shortage, very hard. We are down staff, administrative staff, who can sit there and pull files, prep them for the adjudicator, box them up if they're in an office that's too busy to handle it, put it in the postal service, get it mailed out, open up that box, take it out, take it to the officer, give it to the officer who can use it and actually make a decision. If we can eliminate that, imagine how much resource we save, how much faster we can go. So even if we're taking in paper, if we can digitize up front, we always have that available at the touch of a button. So these are things that we're trying to work on. Of course, as you can imagine, we take in 7 to 8 million requests a year. And as you know, each of those requests is not one page, it's multiple pages. So we have to think through, how can our systems handle that? How do we get enough people to do that, just so that we can then be efficient over here? These are the questions we're raising, and we are pushing really hard to get ourselves there.
That's great to hear. I mean, when I know our partners at the council have been involved in some litigation related to cases that were literally buried in some cave in under some mountain in the naturalization. When you get to those moments and you think, sweet forgiveness, really? That they're buried in a cave? That's why we can't get them? You're right. So we've got to get out of those kinds of realities. Here's the thing about digitization and electronic processes. The folks in this room are going to be doing 30% of the cases that are in front of you. If the systems aren't going to work for this crowd, then it's not going to work for the agency either. So how much are you considering? How much are you willing to consider differently the role of lawyers in the system? Too many of the systems don't make room for the legal advocates in representing the clients in the electronic processes. So
that's right. That's right. And so we are absolutely thinking through that. How in for example, the idea of electronic intake, completely understand that most people have their own systems. So using my USCIS to take in a filing is not something you're going to do. It's easier to just hit print, put it in an envelope, send it out. So we are trying to figure out how we're going to communicate with you. And I know that we have already done quite a few focus groups to talk about how we can build. And again, this is where you're going to catch me on my lack of technology. But an API is the word that I'm told. That's the right word. So to be able to communicate between your systems and ours, the way the IRS does, for example, with QuickBooks or some of the other programs out there. So we are building on that system for electronic intake. But in the meantime, what else can we do? Because that's not an easy thing to do. I am learning more and more about ensuring that our system can be protected. Of course, we have a lot of information, and we have to ensure that the communication between the two happens very efficiently with no glitches. I can only imagine if there's a glitch on the H-1B. Just imagine the filings and if there's any glitch, we cannot have that happen. So we have to perfect the system. And so it's not as easy as it seems. So in the meantime, what are we doing? Aiming for that full goal of online intake, but in the meantime, finding efficiency so that while we're going to get to the gold standard, which we all want, what can we do to ensure that lawyers can communicate more effectively with us? Is there an in-between where you can have some kind of account, you can communicate with us without snail mail, but more efficiently?
Yeah, and I want to come back around to customer service and communication at sort of the case level, because that is a challenge, huge opportunity, something we want to work with. But Kerry, we mentioned agency coordination, collaboration. So what does that look like from where you sit? Where do you think the coordination is working well, and where, if you could change something about communication within the agencies, where do you think you get your most frustration from, or the thing that would make the biggest difference if you could change?
Right. So in addition to the projects that CIS is doing on their own, DHS is currently working on an A-file digitization project. I can only imagine the time and money it's going to take to take the over 1 million A-files, hard copy A-files that I know are with EOIR alone, and digitize those. I don't know that that's even going to be a realistic in our sort of immediate, certainly not in the immediate future. But we are part of that project to lend our experience and input to have something that would work for OPLA. I know that e-service has its issues, but it's also been helpful since we support over 15,000 registrants in e-service right now, and received over 1.5 million documents through e-service. So I feel like it's a little step in the right direction. Do that? Okay. Tap and applause, please. Okay. But obviously we have to coordinate with EOIR, and so they're the folks that we're really talking to and working with to try to move the systems. You know, I would venture to say 21st century. And working with them. And as I mentioned, they've been a little slow off the mark as far as bringing technology into their systems as a whole. Again, requiring mainly in-person appearances and more hard copy filings and things like that. So we really have to work with them to try to see what other progress we can make in moving forward. But we're, you know, because we're appearing in immigration courts, and just a reminder, I mean, OPLA, we have a whole other part of OPLA that doesn't, we work with the RO, we work with HSI, we advise them and work with them on the ENTA, new electronic NTA system. We work with them to advise them on legal basis for that, for that type of thing. There's a push on that side of the house. And OPLA provides legal advice and legal support for ERO, HSI, and the agency as a whole, in trying to make sure we meet all the legal requirements for that piece going more electronic. And there's a lot of work happening within ICE to move that piece forward. So there's more, relying more on electronic systems, again, for electronic NTA service and other ideas like that we are working on. Again, OPLA more in a supporting role to ICE, but be there to help them. So there's that movement happening too. For the immigration courts, really we have to work with EOR, and that's the challenge. And I think anything you can do to encourage them, we're happy to follow and be good partners with them.
And just an example of how we work together, not OPLA necessarily, but with ICE, when they need the creation of a file, USCIS will become involved. And so we used to do that paper-based, and we're now creating an electronic system so that immediately when there is a request for such a file to be created on someone, it can be done electronically. So that just fundamentally transforms everything, because now you can keep up with a person much more easily. You can gather information much more easily rather than weeks later into the process.
The CIS is the holder of the A files, and
That's correct.
they're the ones that have to produce those when you request them.
So in terms of cooperating with or coordinating with ICE, the asylum backlog in particular, is that coordination, collaboration happening in a way that's valuable and productive? Because everybody in this room has a shared interest in that asylum backlog getting, better than it is now, both structurally and politically. I mean, the limitations of options at the border, the rhetoric around what's happening at the border is driven in large part by the fact that we have this 4-year wait that everybody talks about in order to get your asylum application or your asylum hearing. So what are the agencies doing to work together on that specific issue to address that horrible problem, both structurally and politically?
Well, we have our new asylum processing rule. So, it's very, very new. And we are working very hard on it. We spent a lot of time preparing for this, a lot of training. And I can't report on how it's going yet because honestly, it's weeks old. So we will find out over the coming months how things are going with regard to that. And of course, we are carefully monitoring. I am getting regular updates almost daily to determine what's happening, how well is it happening, and hopefully it's moving in a smoother fashion than our traditional systems.
It occurred to me that that rule is going to require you to hire a lot more asylum officers.
That's correct.
Is that part of that 20% labor force gap, or is that you got to hire those in addition to the 20% that you're missing?
That is part of our entire hiring process. And we have hired a certain, obviously we can grow the program as much as is possible, but it will depend on how many resources we can put into it. So this is why it is so important to receive appropriations. For that to really, really work and have a dent, we will need funding. Otherwise, we can't keep dipping into the folks who are paying us fees to pay for every part of the humanitarian mission, especially if it starts to grow in the number and the amount.
Yeah. And look, and I want to get your perspective on this. I need to say, we are happy to work in partnership with you to figure out how that system can work. But where we sit right now, we have deep concerns and reservations that those timeframes and the process that are going to set up, that the first thing out the door will be due process and a fair hearing. So we have real concerns that's going to move too fast and too many people are going to get chewed up in the process. It's not that we'll be thought partners with you on how do we fix that, but just to say that's got to get fixed. What is asylum case processing look like from your perspective?
Right. So as all of you may know, the asylum officer rule really went through a huge transformation, and it is going to be putting a huge burden on USCIS. I don't think that we can understate how the demands on CIS to sort of make the AO rule work. OPLA has a relatively limited role in it, but in order for that to work, it actually created more demand on CIS, and that when they are referring cases to us, they have to provide information to us because we have such a short turnaround to be able to appear in court, that we're having to rely on our partners at CIS to help us also to meet those short deadlines. I agree. We want to be very careful and cautious for how we move forward. I think with the AO rule sort of where it landed, I think there's some, hope actually that the number of cases that end up being referred to the immigration court will be perhaps fewer than traditionally has happened, with the understanding that CIS has to grapple with and make decisions on more complicated issues than maybe they have in the past. And also that some of the cases that get referred over where the judge does have to weigh in, maybe cases that OPLA is not even appearing in those cases. So it would just be the respondent, if they have counsel, to present the case in front of the immigration judge, and that will have a relatively limited role in the AO rule referral cases. So, again, even we've seen this with the PD memo, as new things come over, we need to see how it works. We need to get feedback from all of you and what you're seeing on the ground. I have been doing a lot of town halls and will continue to do town halls with the OPLA folks out in the field to see how it's working for them, as we work these things through. So I just will commit to you, and as I know Ur has also today, to work with all of you in AILA to get constructive feedback as this thing moves forward. But because I don't think any of us, that's not why we took these positions. That's not why we're in government. We're not here to railroad people. We're not here to try to reduce, take away people's due process. But we are here to try to make the systems work better.
That's an applause moment, I think.
And if I could add, just what's important is a person is starting out in a non-adversarial environment. That's so critical. And what we need to, like I said, it's too early to figure out where the systemic issues lie. And we're going to get some results, obviously, as this is implemented, and we're being very careful. I can tell you that the people we have hired for these positions are very high-level experienced folks who have been inside Rayo. Most of them moved from a job in Rayo, so they had a lot of really good experience into high-level positions. We wanted to make sure to get this right from the get-go. And so we are constantly monitoring, how's it going? What can we do? How do we improve? So this is something I totally agree with you, Kerry. We have got to hear from you how it's going as well. And we need to hear about some of the systemic issues that you're seeing and report them back to us. And we'll just continue iterating as we build on a new way of conducting the asylum process, implementing the asylum process at the border.
And can I just say, I just want to underline what Ur said about the fact that we're giving folks coming, newly arrived individuals an opportunity to present a case in a non-adversarial setting. And I think that can't be emphasized enough, how important that will be for people, and to create a better environment for them to be able to be open and express their true sense of fear and why they can't return. And again, we're sort of hopeful to have a partnership and work the system in a way that really will assist and not detract.
The concept is sound, and you're right. I think we agree that the opportunity for a non-adversarial review of that case is huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be mindful of how long it takes both to educate the person who's doing the non-adversarial advocacy, mostly for themselves, if we're not really purposeful about getting representation in there, the learning curve for them, the acquisition of documents, building a case. The system has to make accommodations for that. And that's where we've been. We're willing to talk to you. We're willing to disagree, but commit to figuring out how to make this system work. I share the concern that the idea that this is going to be a self-contained system that isn't going to have some spillover effect on sort of the legacy asylum process in case, I'm skeptical of that as well. We've always seen that we think we're just going to create solutions over here, and that they won't impact the existing backlogs, the existing processes. I think we have to keep our eye on that. We will continue to do our best to be the eyes and ears and thoughtful, respectful partners with you in addressing the problems that we see. There's a lot to talk about, and we don't have a ton of time. Let's talk about DACA, and then I want to get to the politics of immigration these days. DACA was a huge deal for the country, for the politics around immigration, for the people that benefited from it, and it's just gone through this really disastrous life cycle. Not really clear, sort of where it is. What does DACA mean to the agencies, both as a program, as a signal that we can do humane things for populations that need them? So I'm just interested to hear from you. What does it look like from where you sit?
Well, I have to say, this week has been really special. It's the 10th anniversary of DACA, and I started the week with an internal workforce engagement celebrating DACA. Kerry, you started out by talking a little bit about your workforce, The USCIS workforce, equally committed, understands the mission, understands that there are people behind the requests coming into us. Are we inundated? Are we backlogged? Is it hard to do work without being right-sized? Yes. Does that make it seem then that perhaps that's not what our workforce is like? I think it sometimes does to the person who is hoping to receive a response in an efficient manner and contact us in a way that they can and actually reach us. I recognize that. We're trying to work on all of that, but the workforce itself, they are committed to the mission. And I saw that this week when we had this incredible internal engagement celebrating DACA and all that was achieved by the agency. 830,000 people have benefited from this program over the last 10 years. So that's a testament to everyone involved, the advocates who made it happen, and the people who are the recipients of DACA, who advocated for themselves, and the people inside the agency and the policymakers who made it happen. So that was celebrated internally. And then yesterday I had an event with 5 individuals, 4 of whom had DACA and 1 of whom has not been able to apply as an initial applicant. So I heard their stories and I know we all know them. Many of you represent them. And it's a reminder how special, I mean, I just kept hearing, this has fundamentally changed my life. And imagine if I was put on a path to citizenship, if Congress actually does that, what more I could do for the nation. And that was so true. There were these business owners, there were people studying, people giving back to the community. There's so much more to do if we could get legislation done. That is the ultimate solution. But in the meantime, at USCIS, we are going to work really hard to continue renewing everybody that is currently a DACA recipient and continues to apply to us and is eligible. So we will do the best that we can to uphold and preserve and fortify the program as much as we can in the meantime, but we really do need Congress to step in. That is the final solution. And I heard it once again loud and clear yesterday from the 5 individuals whom I spoke with.
Thoughts?
Well, I think DACA has been an amazing program, but the frustration, of course, has been that it remains DACA. It's not a path to citizenship. I know all of us in the executive branch, as Ora just said, are really working to support a more humane and fair system moving forward. But we have parameters, we're in a road and we can kind of drive back and forth in this little, alleyway. But until or unless something broader can happen, and I know all of you know this, and when I was a member of AILA, we said the same thing and really tried to work towards something more durable solution through Congress. But in the meantime, yes, like the AO rule and some of the labor initiatives that we're involved with to support individuals that are exploited in their work, to try to support them in their into coming forward so that they're not afraid to come forward and report those cases. Some of the initiatives on military, trying to support military veterans, some ideas for opening the U.S. military to more non-citizens, not just people that have green cards and citizenship, that I think Margaret Stock has talked about. I think that those initiatives are great, and we'll do everything we can to support the administration and the secretary in some of those ideas and moving forward. But we are, again, in a small alley, and we're doing the, sort of the best we can to drive the car forward. But we all know that we certainly got the message out that the immigration system is broken.
Yep.
And everyone says that now, and have for 10 or 15 years. But I'm hopeful, again, whatever we can do and the messages we can bring both to the appropriators and the authorizers on the Hill for our piece. I know that the sister agencies are doing the same to try to get the message out that, the system is all connected. It's all one piece, right? So the things we're seeing at the border are connected to what's happening here, and that if we can have a fulsome change in a way that's going to really address the underlying problems, we can maybe see our way out of what is a really intractable situation. So I know we're trying to be creative, and this creativity, like with the arrow, can maybe create some other problems, but I think the administration really deserves some credit, and the secretary deserves some credit for trying to see his way towards, and the president see their way towards some solutions, some better improvements in what we've been doing, and we're all trying to do our part to make that happen.
I mean, look, that you nailed that right ahead. The frustration is that Congress has for 20 plus years refused to do its job. It has placed the burden of making this out of touch system more workable on the executive branch. And now we have this, because of the, horrible politics around this issue, immigration courts weighing in to further narrow what the executive branch can do, even in the DACA space. So this hugely transformative opportunity, both for the lives of those people as well as the politics in general. And it hasn't delivered the political benefits, the headwinds that I thought that it would. At least they didn't sustain themselves. So about that, we find ourselves in one of the most toxic political environments around immigration I have ever seen or heard of. It really is brutal. Certainly I feel it. Does it limit the options? I mean, how does all of this anger in Congress and more broadly, I mean, are you able to operate despite it? I mean, do those political headwinds blow against you in ways that limit your options and what you can do? What does it feel like to be where you are in this really difficult political environment?
Go ahead.
So, okay. So the answer to that is yes and no. So I'll start with the no, because frankly, so many issues at USCIS that need to be addressed are frankly just making it do what it needs to do. It's not a political question. It's an agency that, what do we do every day? We receive requests, we process them, and we make decisions. That's what's fundamentally at our core. What's so great about it is those decisions are so impactful to the person, to the community that people live in, to the nation. Fundamentally, we make decisions, and we need to make them efficiently, quickly, right? Carefully. We have to ensure that we're following the law. We have to ensure we have strong policies. We have to ensure we're protecting the national security, public safety, all of that. But we have to make a decision in a timely manner. That's not political. That's what an agency, any agency, whether you're going to the Social Security Administration, you need to do that. Whether you need Veterans Affairs benefits, you want them to make a decision quickly in a timely manner under the law. So our agency right now has such a big backlog that I think that's the fundamental issue right now with regard to our agency. So in terms of the politics, if we can fix that, that leaves room for more discussion. I mean, I can't imagine if Congress today said, oh, by the way, we need you to process another 10 or 11 million requests from people. We already have a backlog. We need to get the agency back to stability, back to a place where when there is a humanitarian crisis around the world and we need to go help, no problem, no effect on our mission. We can do that. We're at a place now where we're constantly, like you said, whack-a-mole. We have only so many resources, and we're constantly like, oh gosh, what's most important today? We gotta work on that. And I don't want our agency to be there. I guess that's for any federal agent, any agency that's serving the public. We need to make sure it can function and respond to the people that it serves in a timely and efficient manner.
I think OPLA has traditionally been impacted, I think, more directly by some of the political changes, by the administrative changes, the different administrations. So for example, MPP, when MPP came in, I make it a point to meet with all the individuals that are being considered for deputy chief counsel positions even though I'm not officially the person making that decision, I want to meet with them and get to know them. And I had a very, very impactful conversation with a deputy chief counsel applicant out of El Paso, who was incredibly impacted by the by MPP. And not saying they agreed or disagreed, politics aside, having to work long hours on the weekends, like hundreds, like thousands of people coming through, the humanity, working with everybody to have to process all of those cases, how incredibly difficult it really was for them to have to do that, and then to turn around and have to undo the process. Again, not saying, agree, disagree. That's not my point. My point is that OPLA is, asked to step in and do a lot of work on behalf of DHS at a moment's notice, and our staff is so committed to the mission. They'll step up and they'll do it, and they'll do the work that they're asked. But it does impact them as people, as attorneys, as professionals, to have to be swung from side to side. So I see the impact on our people and having to work on some of these different programs. Having said that, again, our mission is to represent the agency before the immigration courts. And so in that sense, it's not political. It's not, they're not impacted by necessarily the debates in Congress or so forth. I think ICE as an agency, and I don't want to speak completely for them, but just as their counsel, I know they are tremendously impacted by the different debates and having to help out when things change and mission shifts on their systems. So I think it's hard. I think our staff does get impacted as well in the political system in certain parts of the country. We can't give out our emails to all of you because public emails go out. Our staff gets doxxed in some places. There's actual safety issues and morale issues around the work that we do in some places. And I know that AILA attorneys are professional in what they do and wouldn't engage in that sort of behavior, but it does happen. So I want all of you to know that it does affect us, and it does affect our people, and we need to support and protect them so that they can do their work. So I think that those are some of the ways that we see it, but as overall, we try to make sure we're doing our job, being out there every day. I'm thankful that we were able to work on prosecutorial discretion and create some priorities, and working with the secretary to carry forth his vision of the priorities. But yes, I think in some smaller ways, but impactful ways, our staff on a kind of daily basis does get affected by the hot temperature that exists around immigration.
Well, I want to give you a chance for any final comments that you want to make, but I want to end by saying that we need you. We need you doing what you just described, which is just getting to the business of that agency every single day in a proud way and telling the story of the lives that you are changing when you get an opportunity to do that work every day. That's critically important to us on a day-to-day basis and to the country in changing this political debate. And having you where you are, understanding and being an advocate with us to make sure that the processes that get put in place are true to our values, not just our laws, and that due process and the principles of fairness are infused in all of the work that you're doing. So we are enormously grateful that you rose your hands to be public servants and that you are where you are. And we're going to continue to respectfully disagree, but hopefully more often than not lock arms and figure out how do we fix this system together. So let you end with whatever it is that you want to say to us and what you need from us.
So thank you, Ben, for noting how important it is for us to continue our engagement. I'm in a room full of lawyers, and I'm going to say it. Talk to us. It's so important. And Kerry Selby, who's leading our external affairs, is on her way to creating a stakeholder inbox where you can send us, systemic issues. You're seeing a trend of cases where something went wrong, and please let us know. Talk to us. We might be able to agree. We actually might be able to agree. And we may not. If we don't, we don't. That's okay. But I can guarantee you that if it is something that we happen to agree upon, even if it takes time to fix it, it will be faster, cheaper, and less adversarial if we do it by talking to each other rather than going through litigation. So to the extent I can implore you to try to reach out to us when you have concerns, please let us know. I will tell you, I was once the chief counsel of USCIS. I now see that our litigation portfolio has quadrupled. That is not healthy for the agency, because imagine the resources that go into that. And once you're in that posture, it's harder to come to the right solution. So please, let's try to do this together. Let's engage as much as we can. And I am not saying that there will be times when you're disagreeing, and absolutely we've got to do that. But that was just, I wanted to make that point because I think it's so important, because it's really something that I'm constantly working on. And it takes up time away from other things. But I wanted to close because you mentioned that we should reflect our ideals. During my DACA engagement yesterday, the White House DACA engagement, one of our participants, one of the DACA recipients said, our laws should reflect our ideals. And I was just struck by that because I think that's so true. And Congress may not be acting on that at the moment, but at USCIS, we're going to do the best that we can to reflect the ideals that I think we all share.
Thank you. I guess I just want to reiterate what a privilege and honor it has been to serve as the principal legal advisor with OPLA. It's a challenging position. It's a challenging job, as we discussed. I would be happy for all of you to support a doubling of our staff so that we could be like U.S. attorneys and be much freer and have a lot more time on our hands to work cases. I'm not sure Congress will go that far, or you would either, but that's what it would take. But in any event, I do want to also congratulate you on your 75th anniversary. AILA has really been an incredible organization. All of you have contributed greatly to our nation and to the immigration system. And I would reiterate what Or said, which is that please talk to us. Please reach out to us. Again, we may not always agree, but we're always happy to hear the constructive comments that you can bring. And it lets us know what's happening in the field too. I mean, I'm out there, I'm talking to our staff, but it's helpful to get information from all sides. And so I want to encourage you to do that. Please know that as part of the PD memo that I think Judge Tipton hasn't been able to vacate is that we've asked our chief counsels to be available to you to do stakeholder engagements. Francie Lynn Youngberg, who's our public engagement director in ICE, works with OPLA. She has community relations officers out in all of the AORs, working with our chief counsels and with all of you to communicate with you, to hear your feedback, both with ICE, ERO, HSI, but also for OPLA. So please do that. And I want to congratulate Jerry McKinney to Jeremy in being elected your new president. I know he'll represent all of you well to us. And I'm excited to work with him and to continue to work with AILA. And I just would like to say that every day I come to work, again, honored and privileged, but also understanding the challenges that we all face and that the solutions may not be perfect, but we're all going to do our best to try to make the systems work better for everybody, because I truly believe the U.S. is a nation of immigrants and that we need to stand firm in that belief and moving forward to have a better, brighter future for all of us, our clients, and our nation.